Hey everybody, this is herculespetix, founder, curator, docent, and gift shop employee of the herculespetix Academy of Comic Book Studies. Today we're going to be looking at Marvel Preview number 20, featuring Bizarre Adventures. Marvel Preview was a Marvel black and white magazine that started in 75, and it was kind of like Marvel Premiere or Showcase. Every issue was a different character, a different storyline, a different title. And I guess around number 20, I assume they had some deadline problems because Bizarre Adventures was the title. Nice logo, by the way. I really like this logo. They just reprinted a bunch of old stories from Marvel Preview and other black and white magazines published by Marvel. But it's quite a collection. It's really good stuff. They kind of cherry-picked from these mid-70s titles. Most of them are from 75 or 76. In fact, all of them are. But what a way to start it off. They got a new Howard Chaykin cover, new as of 1980, illustrating his character Dominic Fortune, who we shall see within. Man, I love this fully painted Howard Chaykin style. He pretty much only did this for from the late 70s to the early 80s. He was pretty much dropped out of comics and started doing paperback covers, graphic design, kind of fancy graphic novels, painted graphic novels for Byron Price, and was pretty much not seen in the mainstream comics of the day. But I guess he could do one cover for Marvel. But man, I love this stuff. It's so sad to me that he stopped doing this. He never did it again after the early 80s. He never did this beautiful, lush painting style that he was really good at the time. Nice stuff, just very appealing to the eye. Always uses great colors, always has great design elements in his covers. So we have an inside front cover here by George Perez, also illustrating a story within. Contents page. And this is nice. They get, they get Howard Chaykin to recount how he created Dominic Fortune. And to be honest, Dominic Fortune is really just a retread of his character, the Scorpion, who he created for the Atlas Seaboard Comics line in late 1974. He wrote and drew two really great issues of that comic. Highly recommended. Two of the best comic books from the 70s, bar none. Atlas Seaboard shut its doors pretty quickly. So he walked across the street, Howard Chaykin walked across the street to Marvel and said, hey, I got a character for you. And it was basically just Scorpion, but there is a major difference. Like the Scorpion, he's a 30s era pulp-like soldier of fortune. Even though his stories were very serious, he's very lighthearted. He's got a good sense of humor. Basically your typical Howard Chaykin iconic character. But he decided to change the milieu from the, gritty Depression-era streets of New York City to 1938 sun-drenched Hollywood Hills. That's the setting. And he, of course, changed a few other things. But basically, this is the Scorpion. It's almost the same character. Each story has a nice little introduction by Roger Stern, which is nice, gives you a little background. So here we go. Dominic Fortune, the Power Broker Resolution. And just nice splash page. Chaykin's always so good at this. Like I said about the covers, always great design elements, like it could be a movie poster. So the script for this comic is by Len Wein, and Howard Chaykin does the art. I also assume that Howard Chaykin probably did the bulk of the plotting, like he usually did. So we start off the story on this gambling ship, which is just off the 3-mile limit from the California coast. That was a thing back then. You could have gambling, but if it was in international waters. This ship is called the Mississippi Queen, and it's owned by Sabbath Raven. And she has one resident on her ship, and it's Dominic Fortune. He lives there, and he's also a horrible gambler, which is a pretty bad idea for him to live on a gambling ship. They have a very interesting and nebulous relationship, these two, Sabbath and Dominic. You know, of course, she's his landlord, but he's constantly losing his rent money at her gambling tables. So because of that, he has to take all these like very lucrative, like soldier of fortune, mercenary type jobs, because he's a pretty bad gambler. He's always losing his money. And Sabbath introduces him to this client, a new client. Her name's Coral Einhorn. And she hires Dominic to kidnap her ex-husband. And she explains why. He basically owes her $250,000 in alimony, and he won't pay it. Turns out her husband is like a William Randolph Hearst type character. And he... Dominic asks her, is like, why don't you go to the courts? And she says, I did. And the last 2 process servers I sent to his Skycliff Manor they never came back. So this guy's obviously very powerful. He has a lot of pull, just like William Randolph Hearst did. So she tells him that Skycliff is like a fortress. It's like the name implies, it's on a huge cliff on one side, and then there's minefields all around it. She gives him a map of the place, and Dominic Fortune agrees to the job and gets to work. Sabbath Raven flies him out there on her little seaplane, and I guess she also acquired for him these weird glider wings. So he glides down. He's kind of relieved that they work, but then there's a bad downdraft, and he crashes into the cliff and has to climb up to the top. As soon as he gets to the top, for some reason, there's this Japanese soldier attacks him. There's Japanese soldiers guarding the whole place. Dominic Fortune takes him out and throws him over the cliff so as not to raise alarm. And then another Japanese soldier attacks him. Oh, I did want to mention here, guys, just like, I would take it as the master of point of impact in a fight scene. When someone's getting punched, he just captures the total body language, and it's really dynamic whenever he shows someone getting punched. So he subdues this, or overtakes this Japanese soldier, throws him over the cliff. So he sees a Japanese bomber. So he's like from the Japanese military. He's like, what the hell's going on here? So he basically listens in. He's eavesdropping on Jacob Einhorn. And Jacob Einhorn is entertaining all these like top brass military officials from Japan. And Dominic hears his insidious plan. Basically, as a newspaper tycoon, he offers the Japanese all this propaganda through his newspapers, but more importantly, through his vast connections, he can get them information on military bases and other things like that. Just wanted to point out, look at that interesting, almost like marker to do the shading. He even mentions Pearl Harbor as a particular juicy plum he could give them info on. Because I don't know if I mentioned this earlier, but this is 1938. So the Japanese were already rattling their swords, weren't too friendly with us. So this could have happened, maybe. So all that Jacob asked for in return, it's actually a pretty big ask. He asks that once they conquer America, he's to be given Texas and Mexico as his own personal fiefdom. He always wanted to be a land baron, I guess. So this guy's he's gonna sell out America. He's a bad egg. So Dominic Fortune's here's enough. He's like, not on my watch. I'm gonna take this guy out. He goes to his garage, which is full of vintage cars, and he blows it up. Of course, this causes a huzzarai. All the guards are ordered to find this intruder. And the Japanese decide to just leave. They're like, this is going to alert the American authorities, all of this commotion. We're going to go to our plane and get out of here. Dominic leaps into the window of Jacob's mansion. And Sabbath comes to pick up Dominic right on cue. She's got this little hook here. And not a hook, I'm sorry, like this weird undercarriage under the seaplane. And Dominic Fortune has this grappling hook. And he swings it, and the plane catches it. And he grabs Jacob, and they both go flying off, attached to the plane. They're flying right over the Japanese bomber. And one of the generals is like, hey, we got to tie up this loose end. And they shoot Jacob right in the face and kill him. So I guess earlier, Dominic put some explosives right near the Japanese bomber. And he fires at them, and it totally blows up the Japanese military guys. Later on, we see Dominic is back on the Mississippi Queen with Sabbath. Coral Einhorn bursts in, angry as hell. She's like, I told you to kidnap my husband. I didn't want him dead. I didn't want you to blow up his whole sky, whatever it's called, his whole mansion. And he's like, settle down there. I said I'd help you collect your $250,000, and I did. While I was snooping around your husband's house, I found this necklace in a wall safe. It's worth way more than $250,000. I like this very classic mid-70s Chaykin. That's the thing is, like, Chaykin has so many phases. I like a lot of them. I like almost all of them, except for the past 20 years where he can't really draw that well anymore. But this, early mid-70s stuff, just great. I wish there was, 20 years of this. I wish there was 20 years of his painted stuff. I wish there was 20 years of his American flag era stuff. So Coral's happy. And Dominic takes his 10%. He has more than enough money to pay back his back rent to Sabbath. But before he does that, he says, there's a roulette wheel that's calling my name. I'll get back to you later. So like he's a degenerate gambler. He's bad. If he wasn't so good at his job, he'd just be destitute. So now we have Dominic Fortune in the Messiah in the Saddle resolution. We see this old cowboy sneaking up on this kind of like a little shack, and he murders this guy who's residing within. He's got this, he steals this black box, some kind of machinery, and he rides up to the cliff, activates the machine, and it seems like it causes a localized tiny earthquake that swallows up the house into a fissure. I should mention this is story and art by Howard Chaykin, full writing duties. Another really nice designy splash page. It seems like in this story, Howard Chaykin's using a lot more magic marker effects. Just doing this, like, sometimes it's pretty splotchy, and like you can really see, wow, he's just taking a magic marker and going like that. But of course, it's Howard Chaykin, so he does it well. It looks good. So we see this movie poster, Noble Flag. That's the guy we just saw on the last page. And interesting that he's spelled just like Reuben Flagg of American flag fame. So I guess he liked that name. 7 or 8 years later, he'd use it again. So Dominic is hanging out with Sabbath once again. He gets a phone call from the biggest Hollywood executives, and they want to hire him. Apparently, this Noble Flag fellow, he was the biggest silent film star. When the talkies came in, he kind of lost his popularity, but he's still rich as hell. After he lost his popularity, he found God. He became this total holy roller. I think he had his own radio show where he'd preach the gospel. A total self-righteous evangelist type. So he's been, preaching against vice and sin, but recently he's been preaching against movies, actually saying the cinema is sinful, you know. People shouldn't go to movies. They're not good for your soul. So these Hollywood executives don't like that. They think it might spread. So that's why they want Dominic Fortune to find dirt on this guy and get him to stop. So Dominic takes the job. So I guess Sabbath is kind of his partner sometimes, because Sabbath says, I'm going to take the first flight to New York. Because the New York mob is involved with this. She knows this because Dominic tells her that Flag's financial advisor, Olga Samaglia, he knows her personally. He knows that she's like a bigwig in the New York mob. So Sabbath agrees to fly out there, and Dominic's going to stay in L.A. and investigate. So the first person he's going to check out is this woman, Lily Germain, who's become the coke dealer to the rich. And she used to hang out with Noble Flag. So he figures he'll question her. He gets to her house, and there's some guys there, some thugs. And Flag is outside listening in. Turns out it's Noble Flag and Olga and his thugs. And they're threatening Lily. They say, Noble says, if you don't hand over every record of every dope deal I've backed you on, it's going to be curtains for you. So we find out that Noble Flag's a crooked religious leader. Wow, what a novelty. Dominic Fortune swings in, fists a pumping and legs a kicking, and one of the goons shoots Lily dead. Noble and Lily escape while Dominic is fighting his thugs, and they use that earthquake machine. They activate it. The windows start like tinkling and then cracking, and then the whole ground starts shuddering, and Dominic jumps out of the building. We don't know if he did it just in time, though. You know, well, I mean, it's pretty obvious. You know he's not dead. So basically, he starts using his earthquake machine to attack all of the casinos and the opium dens and the bordellos. And this serves him in two different ways. It helps his ministry because basically he gets all these followers because he claims that he brought down the wrath of God on these, dens of sin and vice. But the real reason is that now he can take over all these rackets because they're all dead. So he's a crooked motherfucker. So meanwhile, back on the Mississippi Queen, Dominic's kind of left in charge. And this guy comes in, and he claims to be basically a disgruntled gambler who's like, I lost too much money. I'm going to take I need a getaway. And I need your seaplane. Give me the keys. And he's got one of the employees at gunpoint. So someone opens the door at the time to tell Dominic something, and it distracts the gunman. And Dominic kicks the shit out of him. And look at that punch there, that position. I think that's physically impossible. You would just fall over backwards. But it's pretty dynamic and cool looking. So right then, Sabbath calls back from New York. And she says, I got the dirt on what's going down here. It seems like Flag approached the mob 8 months ago with some Buck Rogers story about a ray gun that could wipe out buildings. They just laughed at him, but Olga believed him. And she's been financing him out of her own pocket. She doesn't want the East Coast mob guys to know. So Olga wants to unite the LA mob under her control. So it turns out this guy actually works for Olga, this angry gambler. And he says, you're too late, Fortune. They They started the blitz 20 minutes ago. So basically, I guess they're not just going to attack like gambling dens and casinos and opium dens. They just start using the earthquake machine on all these banks all across the city. An army of thugs just robs them blind, takes all the money out of all the banks. And, you know, the cops are so busy dealing with all these disasters, they're pretty much got a free pass to do this. So Noble Flag tells Olga, he's like, here, you take the money. I'm going to go back to my studio. He owns an actual old movie studio. And take care of some stuff. I'll meet you at the airfield in an hour. She opens the suitcase, and it's all newspaper. He double-crossed her. So back at the studio that Noble owns, he's going to get in this helicopter. He's got all the money. He's going to vamoose to South America. And the helicopter won't work. And it's because Dominic Fortune comes out of the showers with a piece of the engine. I guess he tracked him down because he figured that this machine would need a lot of electricity. And Noble Flag owns a studio which has a generator. So I guess a lucky guess there, but it worked. So they get into this big fight, and it looks like Noble Flag has won. Revs up his helicopter, and then Olga comes in. Noble Flag shoots her dead, and then tries to shoot, I almost said Reuben Flag. Yeah, trying to shoot Dominic Fortune, and he can't see him anywhere. So he takes off, and Dominic Fortune jumped on the undercarriage, and Noble Flag quickly kicks him off, punches him, and Dominic plummets down to the ground. Noble Flag says, now all I've got to do is fly through this skylight, and I'm free as a bird. And he looks up and says, oh my God, I forgot to open the skylight. And he crashes into the ceiling. Kind of bizarre that this guy pulled off this amazingly well thought out plan. And he forgot to open the skylight, and that's his doom. Pretty dumb. But look at this magic marker here. That's pretty crazy. But it kind of works. It's a good effect. So 7 weeks later, Sabbath finally returns from New York. And they catch up. I guess we do see a little bit about their relationship. She gives him a kiss. But who knows? It could be a friendly kiss. So she says, oh, well, at least you got paid for that job. You can pay me the back rent you owe me now. You owe me thousands of dollars. And he's like, well, that's something I got to tell you about, Sabbath. I basically bet this guy that quakes would wipe out the city. And so I lost. And Sabbath's like, Jesus Christ, you're the only person who would bet against himself. Man, he's got a problem. He's got to go to Gamblers Anonymous or something. So now we have the story that was from Unknown Worlds of Science Fiction #2 originally. It's called War Toy. And story by Tony Isabella. Pencils by George Perez, a very young George Perez. And inks by Rico Rival, one of the Filipino comic artists that were prevalent in the 70s. We start off with this emergency room in a hospital. They're wheeling in a robot. This reporter wants to, get the lowdown on what's going on. And this doctor's just like, miss, get out of our way. We got to rescue this robot. And, obviously they all know this is highly unorthodox. And, but basically he says, miss, this is a brave veteran. And this is a VA hospital. I know it's weird that he's a robot, but we're going to take care of him as well as we can. So this reporter, her name's Betty, she says, okay, I guess I'll just hang out in the operating room until I can get some information. In the meantime, I'll gather my thoughts for tonight's broadcast, and which is a very convenient way to show us flashback information. She thinks of this General Hamilton RK. And it says in the notes that his last name is RK, which is an homage to Robert Kanigher, spells out his initials. So I guess this general, he had a pet project in the military. He was going to build this robot soldier. He called it FM1, Fighting Man 1. He meets resistance from everyone. Everyone's like, this is ridiculous. But he goes through with it. He has faith in this project. And it works. He trains this robot himself. Turns out he's amazingly capable. Amazingly formidable. And he proves himself in front of the military brass, goes through all this test. But they say, we don't like it. And they also find it disturbing that the general refers to the robot almost like as a human, or almost as if it's his son. So the brass isn't going to support him. And he gets demoted. He basically takes some minor desk job in the military. But he does request that FM1 be his assistant. So they live together. He continues to train him. He's the laughingstock of the military base. Everyone, they call the robot derisively, they call him war toy. And that really hurts General RK's feelings. But everything changes one day. Aliens attack Earth. And they beat the crap out of Australia and take over Australia. Everyone is just freaked out, of course. So I guess the military leaders are so, just worried about this. They give War Toy a chance and General RK. They say, go to Australia and do some recon. We'll see how your War Toy works in a real war. So they go down there. I like how General RK looks pretty much like Sergeant Rock in a lot of these panels. They're fighting the aliens, and during the fight, they totally burn General RK. They fry him. General RK says, War Toy, you got to get back to the military brass. You got to give them the information we discovered. Basically, the aliens are kind of vulnerable. The reason why they haven't gone past Australia's shores is because they ran out of fuel. So he basically says, War Toy, you got to tell them to attack now while they're still out of fuel, because they're like making more fuel slowly. So General RK dies, and FM1 crashes through the enemy lines, makes it all the way to the military, and he tells them. So with this knowledge, and with the help of FM1 in the first surge, they totally defeat the aliens in Australia. Little homage to the Iwo Jima thing. I guess the cover of that was painted by Mike Kaluta or drawn by Mike Kaluta, and that's the image from the cover. This story was almost written around that image. Mike Kaluta drew the cover, and then they were like, hey, we need a story to go with this. So the war's over. FM1 goes to re-enlist, but the military give him an honorable discharge, and they won't let him re-enlist. They just don't like the idea of having a robotic soldier. They say it would be a bad precedent. This art looks a lot better because of Rico Rivals inks. In 1975, George Perez was pretty clunky. But man, some of these panels look great because Rico Rival gives it this like classic, great illustrative sheen. So FM1's a civilian. He tries to get jobs, but customers faint when they see him. He keeps getting fired. Most people won't even hire him because he wigs people out. His parts start wearing down, and the jobs he could hold didn't pay enough for him to replace these parts. So eventually he just breaks down in this alley one day. And he would have quote unquote died, but just by chance, a VA hospital ambulance was driving by. They pick him up and take him to the hospital. So now we're back to where we started in the present. And I guess FM1 is stabilized, so Betty can go in and talk to him. He basically says, I just want to turn my off switch off. I don't want to exist if I can't be a soldier. So Betty's obviously sympathetic to him. She says, you're a veteran of the Army. I'm going to go on the air tonight and tell your story, and I guarantee money will fly in when people hear your story. And while her back is turned, he says, I wanted to be a soldier. They made me a war toy. And he kills himself. He actually breaks his own chest plate with his fist. And Betty goes back to the newspaper offices, and the editor says, where have you been? The aliens have invaded again. And she just turns away crying. And tomorrow, you think we could handle it. Kind of a sad story. When I was 13, man, I was like, I might have cried. I don't know. This story choked me up. I gotta say, just reading this last page, I was I got a little verklempt. Because the war toy was just a good egg all around. So this next story is called Good Lord. And as you can see, obviously an homage to EC Comics. This was in Marvel, reprinted for Marvel Preview #1. Script by Marv Wolfman. Pencils by Dave Cockrum. But way more importantly than that is inks by the Krusty Bunkers once again. And the Krusty Bunkers in this story consist of Neil Adams, Terry Austin, Pat Broderick, Russ Heath, and Joseph Rubinstein. That's a pretty good murderer's row of inkers there. And this story looks way better than Dave Cockrum normally does. So, God, this looks so much like a EC comic. So basically there's this spaceship traveling through the universe, and they land on this planet, and this giant, gnarly monster comes out and grabs one of the crew. Everyone else just runs. And this guy King, he's the captain, kind of a weird character, interesting character, because the guy's like, Captain, help me. And he's just like, hey, it's either you or me. I gotta get to high ground. So the monster kills that guy. They all start blasting away at the monster. It takes like 100 ray gun pulses to drop it, but they finally do. And they leave the planet. So it turns out, I guess this expedition was financed by this scientist named Wilson. And I guess he actually had this crazy idea that there actually is a supreme being, God, and he actually exists in the universe. And by exploring the universe, we could actually find him. So it sounds pretty dumb. Also kind of weird that this would come from a scientist, because it seems very unscientific. King says, if there is a God, what kind of God would allow such a horrible monster to kill one of our friends, And Wilson says, I merely state there is a God. I don't say there is a just one. So it kind of gets into some theological issues here. So they find another planet to explore. This one seems to be a paradise. Total great earth conditions. It's just beautiful. And as they're exploring it, we see this one monster lurking in the shadows. Man, that's some great inking and drawing there. It's a really weird looking monster. But this other monster, this flying monster, it looks like he has a beard, but those are tentacles. He flies out of nowhere, grabs Joan, the one woman of the crew, and is flying away with her. So the other guy starts shooting at this monster. Wilson actually tries to stop them. He's like, you don't understand. It's a life form. It's an intelligent creature. You can't. And they're like, get the fuck out of our way, Wilson. Are you serious? We're not going to let Joan be killed by this monster. So they kill the monster, rescue Joan. And, of course, King is furious with Wilson. He's like, what the fuck is your problem? So they get to the shoreline, and across the way, they see this beautiful city. So they get on this life raft. Oh, once again, that monster is still lurking, checking them out. So they're rowing over to the other side, and the sea monster comes out. It's a pretty weird-looking sea monster. I like it. It grabs one of the guys and just rips him in two here. You'd never see that in a normal Marvel comic. And then he capsizes the raft. So now it's only three. It's King, Wilson, and Joan. They swim to the other side, and we see the city is even more glorious close up. The spires scrape the sky. It's just really amazing. So they go inside the place. Once again, we see that monster dude skulking about, checking him out. But then this kind of weird jellyfish monster falls from the sky ceiling and absorbs Joan. And Wilson does it again. He says, no, you can't, and grabs his gun. So because of that, Joan is totally dissolved into a skeleton. King slugs Wilson. It's like, you bastard, she died because of you. And then he blows the jellyfish monster to pieces. Excuse me. So they continue to explore through this place. They come to this hallway full of statues of all of these aliens, and they all have halos on their head. And then they start seeing statues of Horus and Ra and Zeus and Odin and Quetzalcoatl, and then even Buddha, Muhammad, and Jesus. They're like, what the hell? And then all of a sudden, that guy who's been spying on them, this very Basil Wolverine monster, man, I love this character design. He pops out of nowhere. And, of course, King pulls out his gun and blows him away. And, of course, Wilson's like, no, you can't do that, you fool. You see what that thing is. What a weird creature. He says, don't you understand? Look at that thing. See that black liquid oozing from it? That isn't blood, King. That isn't blood. That's death. The total embodiment of death. And he puts his hand right into this blackness, this oozing blackness, and it dissolves his hand right off the wrist. He does it just to show him. He's like, look what you've done. He says, it's not going to stop, King. The blackness is going to spread across the whole universe. All because you didn't believe, you didn't understand. The statues in there were angels. They were each sent to different worlds to teach them the ways of their Lord and Master. And you've destroyed them all. There is a God, King, and you've killed him. Good Lord, choke. And God never saw the darkness and never knew that it was good. I love this. The tendrils of black just totally take over. Oh, man. Such a dumb idea, but so like, when I was a 13-year-old, I thought this was some heavy shit. I was like, whoa. Because I believed in all that shit. So I was like, oh my God, the whole universe is going to just be blacked out, basically. But what a silly idea for a story. But fun as hell. I really like this comic. And of course, the art's really slick and nice. Really good stuff from the Krusty Bunkers once again. We have a little afterword by Roger Stern. Some letter pages. And that's it for Marvel Preview number 20 featuring Bizarre Adventures. So, yeah, definitely we'll be showing off more of these. It's interesting. Marvel Preview lasted till issue number 24 and then changed its name to Bizarre Adventures. That became the official title of this Marvel Showcase magazine. This is the only one that's all reprints, though. The other stuff is all new material, and there's a lot of great stuff in some of those issues. So I've got a bunch of them, and I'll definitely be showing them off pretty soon, or maybe not so soon. I don't know. I might spread them out I might do them more quick. But hope you guys enjoyed looking at this. And I hope to see you next time here at the Herculespetix Academy of Comic Book Studies.